but it is quite depressing, the amount of videos like this that you see on YouTube.
Richard O'Sutherland.
News. London Transport say they may have to close the underground system due to an infestation of horses.
Loads of horses, at least 30 I'd say. As the train approaches, they start running away from the train.
And what the drivers say they fear most of all is a head-on collision with a blind tube man.
What's up, YouTube? Hello, it's me. Very good to be here. I've got a new intro, which I hope you enjoyed, and I have been inspired to do something a bit political because I saw this video and I thought it was a massive pile of shite, so I've decided to react to it. Before I dive in, as I like to say, I would just mention a few of my new followers. It's been very nice to have some new people come along and start subscribing to me. T Durbo, thank you. I've had a few little words with you, and you've shown some interest and some appreciation of my videos. It is very much appreciated. Who else has definitely subscribed to me? 54 Spatula. Yes, thank you. Thanks for the Alan Partridge comments. Mr. Manch has made a few comments. I'm not sure if he's subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, Mr. Manch, do it fast, because otherwise I will stop liking you. Right, great. So here we are. It's time for a bit of politics, I guess, and we'll see what I make of this.
Well, last night, in my spare time, I wrote a short story just for you about what it would be like as an American citizen visiting London for a couple of days. So picture the scene. You're an American citizen and you arrive at Gatwick Airport. The first thing that you see, unfortunately, is a police cordon. Now, you're very confused, but the police usher you away. Before you know it, you find yourself in a taxi, and you ask the taxi driver, what on earth is going on there? Well, the taxi driver informs you, nothing to worry about, love, it's just a bomb threat. Now, of course, you are a little bit worried about this.
Bomb threat, nasty. I live in London, so that's partly why this interests me so much. And, you know, I mean, the bomb threats are awful. Every day there's a bomb threat. Well, there's no bomb threats. Okay, there is the occasional bomb threat, Drew.
That surely is not standard practice. Nevertheless, he asks you where you want to go and you say, oh, I'd like to visit the American embassy, please. You have a few visa issues to sort out before your next destination, which is Afghanistan. And you get to the American embassy and there's a police cordon. You ask the taxi driver, what's going on here? And he says, oh, I don't know. He pulls out his phone, Googles it. Oh, sorry, love, another bomb threat. Now that's very, very strange. Anyway,
Another bomb threat. This is becoming like Brazil. Terry Gilliam film.
Salt.
Yes. Okay. So terrorist threats everywhere.
realise that the visa issues will just have to wait till another day, and you ask him to take you to the nearest tube station, which is, in this case, Victoria. As you enter Victoria Station, you swipe your debit card and you head down towards the platform. But the first thing that you're greeted with that stands out to you is poster after poster after poster advertising assisted dying. Now you find this very strange and wonder who on earth is paying for all of this advertising. Surely it's very expensive, and is this not quite a tactless place to put these adverts? You know, given that the underground is a place where last year more than 50 people attempted to take their own lives. So you pull out your phone and you do a little bit of Google research. You want to understand the UK debate on this topic. And one of the first things you find is an MP strangely declaring that despite knowing this cannot be delivered safely, she will in fact be voting for it anyway. Before you know it, you find yourself at the bottom of the escalator, and you look up from your phone and suddenly realise you don't actually really know where you're going. You need to get to Westminster because that's where you bought your hotel, easy access to the Houses of Parliament, which you're very much looking
You bought a hotel?
forward to going and visiting. But you don't really understand the tube map. Fortunately, there's a police officer standing in front of you, British Transport Police, so you
I think he's describing the last time he went to London. I think he didn't really understand the tube map. It is a bit complicated, my friend, I know. But if you live in London for a while, you will work out how to use the tube map.
You wander over to the police officer and you ask him for a little bit of help, a few directions, and he very happily, readily gives it to you. Now you know where you're going, but he clocks your American accent. And he just asks politely, "How are you finding your stay?" To which you reply, quite frankly, "Well, I was scared by a couple of the bomb threats and I was hoping to meet a few more British people and be embraced by British culture when I came here, but I haven't."
I was scared by a few of those bomb threats because, I mean, I live in London and there's every 5 minutes there's a bomb threat. I mean, you can hardly get through Sainsbury's without them cordoning off the bloody milk aisle because there's another bloody bomb threat.
I was hoping to meet a few more British people and be embraced by British culture when I came here, but I haven't really found that so far. Suddenly the police
So, just listen to what happens after you say that.
officer's eyes change, his cheeks redden just a touch, and he looks at you with a stare and says, quite calmly but firmly, "You need to be careful what you say here, ma'am." A second police officer rushes over, having heard your conversation, and gives a concerned look for you. You can't quite understand what the police officer meant by this.
So, the police in London, for a start, they won't be standing around because there's hardly any on the bloody streets. So the police in London, if you say, "Oh, where's the British culture? I can't see any British culture." So, "Where's the British culture? I can't see any British culture, man." The police will warn you, will they? Because you've said, if you're looking at some people who are brown and maybe wearing funny clothes, that is British culture now. It's changed, mate.
But nevertheless, you're not going to take any chances. Surely nothing you've said is illegal, but you decide it's not worth the risk and it's not worth the debate. You thank the police officer and you move on to your train. The following day you wake up in your hotel. Now you've overslept a little bit because of jet lag, but you're really excited to go and see the Houses of Parliament. So you throw on some clothes quickly and you exit the hotel. You march towards Westminster Bridge, and this is pretty exciting. But as you get closer, you realise there's another police cordon around Westminster Bridge. Frustrated, you trail up to the police officer and you ask him, "Officer, what on earth has happened here? Can I cross the bridge?" The officer politely replies, "No, ma'am, unfortunately you can't cross the bridge here. Someone was poked with a very sharp object earlier on this bridge."
Someone was poked with a very sharp object. He doesn't like to say the word dabbing. But someone was poked with a very sharp object. And what's this news report? The man critical after fight on Westminster Bridge. I don't know what that's about. It doesn't actually explain, does it?
The officer politely replies, "No, ma'am, unfortunately you can't cross the bridge here. Someone was poked with a very sharp object earlier on this bridge." How can that be, you think to yourself, right here?
I am worried about that in London. It's one of the things, one of the most important and serious issues we face is people poking each other with sharp objects. I just think that they need to reduce poking people with sharp objects as much as possible, because a lot of people, young people especially in poor areas, are getting poked with sharp objects.
Under the nose of the Houses of Parliament, the centre of British politics. Admitting defeat, you turn away from the police officer and you head towards Euston Station. You had planned today all along to head to Oxford, famous for the University of Oxford and a quintessential beautiful old British town.
Oxford, famous for the University of Oxford.
You're very, very excited to go and visit Oxford. But as you get closer to Euston Station, there's a police cordon around it. Sighing, you walk up to the station and you ask one of the officers there, "Officer, what's happening here? Can I use the station?" "Unfortunately, ma'am, the station's closed today because," you guessed it, "there's a bomb threat." Feeling dejected yet again, you turn away from Euston Station. You realise that your plans for this trip are very quickly falling apart at the seams, but you're determined not to let it go to waste. You pull out your phone and desperately start Googling for things you can go and do and see in London. And then something occurs to you. You're a very big fan of Made in Chelsea, so why not go and visit the borough of Kensington and Chelsea? Now that's an affluent, presumably safe area, and you think to yourself, yeah, that's a great idea. Now, you could take a taxi, but you've decided instead you'll walk. You've only been in Britain for one day, may as well soak in a little bit of the city. But as you get close, you arrive at an area called Ladbroke Grove. You are surprised, although less than usual, to see a police cordon. You approach the cordon, and you approach the police officer who's standing there guarding it. You ask him politely, "Excuse me, sir, what
There's so many police about.
exactly has happened here, and can I go through?" Now, he politely responds to you that there's no way that you can go through this area, but unfortunately I can't talk to you about what's happened here. Nevertheless, you pull out your phone and do a quick Google search, and you...
Ladbroke Grove shooting. Girl 8 and man 34 seriously injured.
realise that just a couple of hours earlier, an 8-year-old girl had been shot here. As you leave Ladbroke Grove feeling hopeless and wondering why you ever came to Britain in the first place, you catch sight of a small demonstration taking place. A small number of protesters appear to be gathered around a building, and you're American, so you're curious about what on earth is going on here.
Americans are very curious. It's true.
You stroll over, and one of the protesters, a Christian pastor, comes to speak to you. He explains that there's a man named Tommy Robinson who is, in fact, not a racist, but one of the people who works in this building, a news studio...
A Christian pastor comes over to speak to you. He explains that there's a man called Tommy Robinson, who is not a racist, oh, he's not a racist? Really? Oh.
...has said to the world that he is a racist. You and all of the other protesters are here demanding an apology from that man. Now, this strikes you as pretty strange. You look around at the group of protesters and actually only half of them are even white. Why would all of these people come out and defend someone if he was racist? But you really don't understand enough about the situation.
Are half of the people who usually stand around shouting Tommy Robinson not white? Are they? Maybe they are. I could be wrong. That's not what I see when I see any documentary or news story about Tommy Robinson and groups of people standing around outside courts or whatever. Half of them are never not white. That's just bollocks.
You're not going to get too involved. What you do ask, however, is which one of these people is Tommy Robinson? Now, the Christian pastor answers you, well,
Look for the twat with a big head.
unfortunately, he can't be here. He's in prison. Ah, for racism, you think? Well, not quite. The pastor explains to you that, no, he's in prison because he breached a court injunction when he released a documentary. That horrifies you as an American with the First Amendment, and so you start to wonder,
Why did he have an injunction against him? Tell us that.
well, how long has he gone to prison for? 2 weeks? 4 weeks? What's going on here? No, 18 months. Shocked, you turn around and walk away. Unfortunately, your day is about to get a lot worse. You turn away from the protest and you think to yourself, I've seen enough of Britain, it's just police cordons anyway. I'm going to head back to the hotel, so you pull out your phone and you begin using Google Maps to navigate. But all of a sudden, your phone is gone, missing from your hand as you were walking. You look up and you see someone speeding away on an e-bike wearing a balaclava with your phone in their hands. There's nothing you can do. You can't catch them, they're far too fast. Your phone is long gone in the wind. Fortunately, another citizen comes over to your aid and says, hey, I could take you to the nearest police station. You graciously accept his offer, and as you're walking there, he explains to you that he's lived in London for 40 years. It hasn't always been like this, and it doesn't have to be like this. As you arrive at the police station, you turn to your kind Samaritan and you thank him for his time and his assistance. You enter the police station, and eventually you're given an interview with a police officer. You fill out a lot of paperwork, and eventually you're given something called a crime reference number. Now, apparently that's something to help you make an insurance claim. You inquire to the police officer a little bit about the investigation that's going to take place, how long it could take, whether you'll be needed to come back to Britain for court, how all of that could work. He lets out a sigh and leans in a little bit closer to you and says, "Unfortunately, Mom, it's very unlikely you're going to be needed in court. In fact, it's unlikely that this crime is ever going to be solved unless we can manage to capture the perpetrator red-handed in the street. You see, we just don't have the resources to deal with this kind of low-level crime. In fact, there's so much of this crime here in London now, there's really nothing we can do. I'm very sorry." Feeling by this point utterly
Nice dog.
demoralised, you leave the police station. You think to yourself on the way out, how do British people live like this? Is Britain some kind of failed state? This is not what you came to visit. You jump into a taxi, and at first you were thinking, well, I'm just going to head back to the hotel. I'll ride it out for a couple of days. But then something occurs to you. That is not the American spirit. That's not the American way. That's not why the stars on the Star-Spangled Banner always face forward. And so you think to yourself, no.
The stars always face forward. Well, they never tilt slightly to the right. What does that mean?
I'm going to make something out of this trip. You ask the taxi driver, where could I go? What could I go and see? I've lost my phone, unfortunately. You can't be bothered to get into the whole story, and it probably wouldn't surprise him anyway. And he explains there's a couple of things you could go and see. There's the British Museum, for example, or the High Court, where many famous cases have been heard. Now that sounds interesting. You opt for the High Court, and he promptly takes you there. You jump out, pay the taxi driver with your debit card, and thank him for his advice. As you wander up to the steps as an aimless, lost American tourist, you catch sight of a barrister just outside the Supreme Court. Curiously, you walk up and you ask him, "Excuse me, sir, what cases are being heard in the court today? I'm just a tourist and I'm very, very interested." Well, he explains to you that he is actually going to be representing a political party today, the Scottish National Party. And you inquire, "Oh, that's very fascinating. What are the issues that they're debating in the court?" And he explains to you, well, it's all about the language surrounding pregnant men. At this point, you're very, very confused, and you have lost all patience to inquire further. Whatever the Scottish National Party want to do with the language surrounding pregnant men does not interest you as an American. You walk away, catch another taxi, and before long, you find yourself back at your hotel. By now, the American spirit has been crushed in Britain. You really are just going to hole up in your hotel for the next couple of days.
The American spirit has been crushed in Britain. Is that what we should have more of, the American spirit? No? But I wouldn't want the Americans coming over here, stealing our culture and, getting rid of our Englishness.
2 days later, you emerge out of the hotel where you'd been shut in, living entirely on room service, refusing to go and explore the various police cordons that London has to offer. You jump into a taxi and you're heading towards the airport. By this point, you are hands together, praying that there are no more bomb threats. You just want to leave Britain. Kabul, Afghanistan cannot come fast enough. Every minute that goes by, every metre that you pass, is 1 metre and 1 minute closer to safety. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, cool story, bro, I understand, I sympathise, but unfortunately everything in that story is true. Not only is everything in that story true, it all happened in just the last couple of days alone. That is what London life is like. So when you have Mayor Sadiq Khan saying Londoners don't feel safe because President Trump has won the election, no, Mr. Khan, that is not why Londoners don't feel safe. Londoners don't feel safe because knife crime has risen 40% since you became the mayor. Sexual assaults are up something like 4 times since you became the mayor. Don't quote me on that statistic, but it's something around that. It is absolutely awful. These are the reasons that Londoners don't feel safe. Our country has gone to the dogs, and there's no other way of putting it. We're taxed more than ever. Our services are completely failing. Everything is going wrong. Now, of course, this isn't all the Labour Party. It's also the Conservative Party, and just bad governance, term after term after term. It's terrible. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as you can. I tried to make it a little bit humorous, but unfortunately some of the topics in there really aren't humorous at all, as you can understand. But it just gives an insight into some of the things that are happening in London just over the course of a couple of days. Anyway, if you like this video or you like these videos, like, comment and subscribe. See you later.
It's very sad, very sad. I live in London. There are lots of problems. I suppose really, I don't want to go on and on, but it is quite depressing, the amount of videos like this that you see on YouTube and other platforms. And I'm a bit of a lefty, I guess, but I'm not a loony lefty, and I do understand, you know, you can't take problems with a country. We have real problems. Those things he mentioned are all real problems. They don't boil down to one thing or another. It's not because there are too many Muslims. You know, the bomb threats, all this. The knife crime has really got nothing to do with culture, in my view. Knife crime is... most of these problems are to do with a general decline in the economy, and the fact that since 2008, I mean, my way of seeing this would be, you know, yes, the NHS is in a state. Yes, we have knife crime, we have street crime. Crime is still overall falling. Certain crimes are increasing, but the overall amount of crime that we experience is still falling and has been for decades across the Western world. Things aren't getting worse. Some things are getting worse, and you know, there aren't enough police on the streets. That's very true, and that's all part of this decline. And Labour probably aren't going to do any better. But trying to blame, if we could just get, this is the oversimplified argument, isn't it? If we could just get rid of the immigrants, our culture would spring back. Our wonderful English culture of football hooligans and people fighting on the terraces and drinking too much and taking lots of cocaine and you know, having fights in pub car parks. It's not that simple. You can't just sort out one element and everything else falls into place. And one of the things I'm really struck by is I quite often look at the sort of right-wing type videos. There's a lot of videos about London and how London's a shithole. I wouldn't go there anymore because there's a lot of Muslims there. There are no no-go areas, by the way. That's bullshit. Try and look for a video of someone actually walking through a no-go area in London, or standing on the edge of a no-go area, I guess, because obviously you wouldn't be able to go into one because it's no-go. But there are no-go areas. There is no Sharia law in, you know, I mean, someone might have Sharia law in their house, I suppose. I mean, you could have pagan law within the walls of your house, but you can't enforce pagan law on society as a whole, because we're under British law, clearly. So many things I'd like to say. I mean, the NHS is Brexit and the NHS, and just talking about immigration, not Muslims so much. This is one of the things that nobody ever says, but which is so clear in my mind. I worked for the NHS for years, and if let's say you stopped immigration today, and over the next 5 years, let's say there were suddenly, could be almost, let's say there's 3 million less people in the country in the next 5 years, because all new immigration stops, nobody comes into the country, numbers of people that require the NHS drops. Right, what's going to happen? You're not going to have a beautiful, quiet NHS waiting rooms with no people in.
Our NHS is at breaking point. Every week, the UK pays £350 million to be part of the EU. That's £350 million that could build one new hospital every week.
Not enough young people to do the work, ironically, so of course you have to have immigration in order for people to do the frankly shit jobs that English people don't want to do. There's a lot to talk about, and I'll probably do a few more videos like this. Sorry in a way, because I know I'm just throughout his video I was basically just being sarcastic, but I do find it rather maddening, and it is very childish, simplistic thinking to think that if you just take away one thing, everything else will fall into place. Life doesn't work like that. We live in an extremely complicated system, and but it is tempting, of course, to just believe that you just do one thing, get rid of the immigrants, get rid of the Muslims, and everything else will fall into place. Nah, it's a little bit more complex. So there you go, radicalisation for the right wing are very good at it, to be fair to them, as good, I would dare to say, as Muslim extremists are good at radicalising as well. I mean, they should share notes, you know, have a little chat between them. So thank you, hope you've enjoyed that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notifications button, leave a comment below and share, and thank you to my new subscribers, and don't nobody go nowhere.